sense of self-preservation.
It's dangerous!
What?
There are people with guns out there.
Gangs of impish lads and ladettes roamed the streets during the day with an unabating and annoying attempt to divulge you of your finances, and it was hardly any different at night. What I did find when I went there, the small boy, about 15 or 16, in tattered clothes and a persistent attitude that seems to be indicating to me would be the best place to buy a trinket. I followed him for what seemed like half a mile in ancient streets, but what was probably only a few yards, until we reached a warehouse to which he referred. As I entered the establishment, I was surrounded almost instantaneously with objects of age and beauty. At least, those were my first impressions. I felt like a 20th century Indiana Jones on a great quest, and it was fantastic. Idyllic wooden statues adorned the shelves, and dresses in African styles proliferated around the establishment. I didn't know where to start.
Well, let's work it out, shall we?
I also procured, for some reason, an old Arabian carpet, which came to me. Upon unravelling it and looking inside, I was amazed to find a rather torn and almost calcified parchment in Latin. Spending my days trying to translate it had been a real trauma. I eventually gave up and handed it to an expert who managed to date it back to the 12th century. Probably a translation from the original stone tablet, I thought. Before I decided on what to do with it, I thought I would share its contents with you. It seems to be a journal entry from around 325 AD by the great Constantine, a day before his resolution of the Council of Nicaea. The trauma of deciding to keep the artefact of immense historical significance or attain a fair amount of undeserved wealth was almost overnight.
And consequently are forced to live in conditions of extreme luxury.
What's a bloke to do? This was the translation. July the 10th, Byzantia, Nicaea, Holy Roman Empire, AD 325. It seems, although it's all pointless, bishops, sectarianism, leaders, orators, my own council sometimes, they all have led up to this, it seems. Hosius of Cordoba, for example, seems to believe, as I do, not that our Lord is shared by all his sons and daughters on earth, as is his holy son Jesus, but begotten by earthly desires, as a bridge between all of us to represent the true world. The benighted Aurelius, a presbyter, believes that divinity was born out of the void of belief, like his father. This dispute seems to have gone on for so long now, that I tire of its incessant nature and simply wish it over. On the morrow, I am to go forth and together with the rest of the Nicaean Council reach a verdict that will satisfy all my subjects. It is in my mind, should the verdict which I desire be validified, that the hierarchical Arius be banished from all my empires, possibly to Illyria. I am adamant in acknowledging that it was not for this discontent that I strove through my father's tetrarchy. I went on to form a polytheistic society for the good of all, rather than that of the paganism which littered the streets of the damned upon my succession. As such, I cast a dazzled and pleased eye over the resplendent purple and gold gown I have just received from a slave of one of the representatives of Africa, Sectarian of Carthage, I believe. I realise how far events have transpired since the start of this dispute. It was not for the desire to set Christian against Christian I stole out of Maximus's military encampment a decade ago. It was for the good of all Rome and the Republic that my journey hence took me to the side of my father, Constantinus, and together we banished the constraints of Galileans, leaving the empire anew. It was only upon my father's death that I realised my own cause, though I have to admit that these scribes of mine, it was only when I stood with my army against Decine and the rest of the Tetrarchy that God fed me abound with religious fervour. I now stand rejuvenated and vigorous before his might and majesty in a belief that the council which will reach the right decision, together the legate Horsius of Carbona, I hold firm in this resolution. But Decine will see the start of the new celebration as well. Has it all been resolved? Eastertide will remember the resurrection and be the glory of the council's resolutions. Now, these deliberations are only overshadowed by the inevitable death of my son-in-law, Licinus, a year ago, and I regret the necessity to kill him at all. This was at Adrianople, at which I was proud to bear the Christian standard. My last words in this entry will foretell that there will always be ascension toward the Christian faith to some extent, and even unto my successors in hundreds of years. My reign only goes a small way to expanding the minuscule cult into a recognized faith, so that all light in God's world will be illuminated by his wisdom and power. I must take my leave now. Secretius has recorded more than 300 bystanders and 1,800 bishops among the throng awaiting my attendance. I wonder at the possibility that this day might be remembered hence for 1,000 years, though my doubts at that are in abundance. My only hope is that tomorrow's verdict brings with it a more resolute world. Now, it's a shame that the Christian world today has forsaken and admonished themselves for such a legacy.
Hey, say that once more, I'll smash your bloody face in.
The doctrines of DEI today seem to be such harsh that trash, it all just trashes Christianity to no small degree. One of the legislations recently scribed by Trump upon his rise to the throne, presidency, was to address the indoctrination of Christianity under compulsion rather than faith. This is also a shame, and that my declaration of finding the transcript such a load of bollocks what I just wrote, really.
And this helps summon up the forces of evil, does it?
Who cares?
What should we actually do about all this? Perhaps we should set up a Sectarian Standards Commission. Give us a good clicking.
Shakanaka.